He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
All right, it is an Alex and Friends show today with Francess Martel, our world editor at Breitbart News. Honestly, one of the smartest people I know, a person with a degree from Harvard, with a law degree, with an incredible knowledge of pop culture and of well over 100 countries around the world, is someone who has a voracious appetite for information and is also delivers it with a light touch that is just absolutely infectious. If you're not familiar with Francess's work, I recommend you bone up on it. She's been here before, but she's here again for a terrific conversation. You're going to enjoy this. This is Francess Martel. All right, Francess Martel is with me, our world editor at Breitbart News, one of my favorite people in all of media. Francess, you knew where I was going to start. K-pop demon hunters. Are you aware of this thing?
I'm very aware, and I have not had time to actually watch it. Every time I try to watch it, either something gets bombed, I have to go back to work, or something else comes up. But I've heard good things. Our colleague John Hayward immediately alerted me to its existence and was trying to get me to watch it as quickly as possible. And I said, I will try as quickly as possible. And here we are, unprepared for your podcast, Alex. I am so sorry.
Yeah, I know, but I had to put you on the spot with it. So, okay, so here's why I'm starting with this for people who are not in the know here. So Francess is our resident K-pop expert she's a resident expert in about 130 other countries also. But she knows K-pop better than anyone. And on Netflix, there is something called K-pop Demon Hunters. And I will tell you, it has been getting a lot of plays in the summer vacation household for the Marlows. And this is where I'm going to be authentic here, and I'm going to reveal the audience. I did not thoroughly vet it. I got to admit, I've been looking over my kids' shoulders while they watch it, and it seems fine. But they like music and they like demons, so it's kind of a good match for small kids, I guess. But what is this thing? People will think I'm joking. This is a Netflix show with K-pop theme, but they also are fighting demons.
Yeah, so I actually do know the plot. I haven't been able to watch it yet, but the plot is something to the effect of there's this K-pop boy band that was created by demons to harvest the souls of the fans. And so they get really, really famous. And then this K-pop girl group has to go and fight them. And I have listened to the music because the music has gotten very, very popular. And it's become this weird part of, almost a moral debate of, are you okay? Is it okay to listen to music that was made by a fake band? And then that feeds into, is AI music going to be okay? Sure. And so it's a whole other debate. And, in my humble opinion, it's pretty soulless music. And I'm not above K-pop. I have my favorite bands. I can list songs. Like, it's not because I'm too good for it, but it really does. Like, you can tell that this is not a real band when you listen to it.
Yeah. And that is it. But again, also with the kids, sometimes with the Netflix stuff, it's so bad. You're just trying not to have their lives get ruined by accidentally seeing something horrible. Yes. I'm not getting any of that out of it. But you're gonna have to check it out. Do you do a lot of TV? Because you got a couple kids around the same age as a couple of my kids.
We do, we have favorite YouTube shows that we do. They're really into Curious George right now. They're really into Blue's Clues. Really into Gabbys Dollhouse on Netflix, which I think it's fine. It's not educational content, but it's summer.
So what do we think of Gabbys Dollhouse? So we like Curious George, and I haven't done any Blue's Clues, but I know what it is. But the Gabbys Dollhouse is a little too flashbangs for me. I mean,
you have boys too. It's a very girl-centric show. So
sure, but we're in LA. This is modern. Like, they don't care like what's going on. I mean, they're fine with it. No. The issue is, it feels like there's like a musical cat who's also an octopus or something, and that's just too much stimulation for me. Like, I feel like I'm turned off by it.
It does have like a little craft segment where they teach them, use old recycled like toilet paper rolls or paper towel rolls, stuff like that. Anything, as my rule is, as long as they're not sitting there like zombies in silence, I'm okay with it. And Gabbys Dollhouse has enough interaction where they'll like talk about it, or they'll come to me and talk about something exciting, like something the cat did, or the cat stole something.
Right.
And that's, you know, that, and obviously like no content that's too adult. But if it's a kid's show, as long as they're interacting with it, as long as they've learned something from it, if they can, you know, pick up a word and they're learning to read, you know, my younger one's learning to read and she's picking up a new word from it, then I'm good with it.
Okay, that's that. All right. So this is a 24/7 struggle though during the summer.
Yes.
How is your summer going? Because my kids I don't like over programming. I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
And I also think that I try to get my kids outside in the sun, swimming or running around, and then they come home and they flop. And you know, my eldest is the only one who can read a book, and he's reading all the time. But there's still a lot of time during the day. You can't just read for like 9 hours. I mean, it's what are we going to get 2-3 hours of reading? I mean, so what's the rest of the time?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I would read 8 or 9 hours, like once I was like 7 or 8. But right now our schedule is, I am making my older one do math, at least, you know, half an hour, 2 days a week. We'll sit down, we'll do math. She's 6, she's we homeschool. We're in the 2nd grade book. So, you know, half an hour, twice a week of that. She does karate 3 times a week, and that's it. I'm very passionate against the over programming, the, you know, 8 hours of camp. Like, kids don't need a full-time job. I did nothing every summer for probably through high school. I don't think I did anything even in high school in the summers, and I'm fine. So I don't want to overstimulate them, but the TV is a challenge. So it's, you know, I leave toys all over the house. It's a mess. You know, I'll put blocks in one room. I'll put like the Magnetiles in the other. I'll get a box of crayons out, and then just like make it like it's not their idea. So they can pick something. Because if I suggest something, it's an immediate no. But if they discover that I left a box of Legos out, they'll sit there for a good hour and play.
Yeah, the Legos are big, and the Magnetiles are also big. Those are the go-tos. And yeah, we get some workbooks, get the workbooks going. No, so I'll give you some Alex Marlow trivia. When I was in the 2nd grade, I read over 100 books. And it was constant. And it's funny because I never thought of myself as a great reader. And then I got in and I was really good at math. Like I did much better on my math SATs than verbal SATs. And then I got, and then I spent my life with words and writing and reading and editing stuff. And it's interesting. So we should have seen the writing on the wall in the 2nd grade. I was always terrible at math. I was always reading. I mean, I think part of the reason I was an overweight kid was the Pizza Hut Book It program. You know, you would read like 7 books and they'd give you a free personal pan pizza at Pizza Hut or whatever. I was always getting those because I was always sitting and reading. Good pizzas.
My older one, who's 6 now, she just destroyed the White House reading challenge. Mine's doing that too. Okay, so this is big. So I have not described this to the audience, but Master Marlow's doing this, and I think he's done or close. He's got like 11 books down. But do you know it? What are the rules off the top of your head? So you have to read 12 books. The kid has to read 12 books, or you can read it with them. And then you just fill it out, and then there's a little box on the bottom where they could either write about their favorite book or draw something. Mine finished. She's on book like 15 this summer, and so we just sent it in. Nice. And they're not huge books, but you know, she's getting into Goosebumps books, which I was kind of surprised by because she's a little young for them. Yeah. But they're not that scary. I read them with them. They're fine. She just read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which I hate and she loves. So it's really fun. She's at an age where she loves everything, and she's really excited. She's like, "What's the prize?" And I'm like, "I have no idea. Like, take that up with Usha Vance. I don't know what it is." But she's really excited for whatever is coming.
Yeah, so this is a thing, and I'm sure people can hunt this down online, but the second lady, Usha Vance, has a book challenge for what goes up to like 6th grade or something. If you read 12 books, then you get an award. My eldest is doing this for sure, so he's almost done. But we were thinking about it, Francess, because we got some time. We're only in mid-July, late July here. Yeah. And it's some of the books, you know, it's like a lot of Dog Man, stuff like that. Like I think we want to, you know, maybe beef up some of the selections, some of the titles that we're talking about here. I'm
struggling with the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you just against the Roald Dahl stuff in general with the Charlie and Chocolate Factory comment? Or is it hit and miss for you?
My beef is with Willy Wonka. Willy Wonka is an abusive, he's a child abuser. He's extremely creepy, and he just ruins the lives of these children. And it's very, you know, my kid loves that there's just candy everywhere in the story, and she doesn't even care what happens to the children. And I'm just reading it, and I'm like, these children, you know, you're supposed to be happy that bad things happen to the kids in the book because they're spoiled, but it's not their fault. They're children. And when you're a parent, you know that a bad kid is the product of bad parenting at that age. You know, once you get to like age 12,
the parents are just horrible.
Yes, the parents are horrible in the book, and the parents don't really.
Francis, hold on. Let me rein here for a second. How come we never talk about this? That all the parents like are gone, and the grandparents are all in bed. Like, this is a story. Everyone knows this, but no one ever talks about this. No parents, and all the grandparents are literally in bed in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and no wonder some sort of predatory candy baron is gonna, you know, make their way into these kids' hearts.
And this guy is a creep. This guy should be in jail. And also, every child is just devouring candy all day, every day. No parent says anything about the candy. No adult stops and says, hey, that's bad for your teeth. Like, no one says anything. And then this guy just has this foothold. We rewatched the movie, and the movie has this sort of Dan Rather journalist character that comes on TV, and like the top of the line story in every news broadcast is Willy Wonka. There's no war, there's no politics. It's just this candy guy on the news. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, it's super weird. Yeah, it's interesting. The Roald Dahl stuff's really hit and miss for me. I'm just going through it right now. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I'm kind of neutral. I really like Matilda. I don't like the BFG, don't like James and the Giant Peach. I really like Fantastic Mr. Fox. I really like The Witches. It really is sort of a hit and miss thing. This is not one of those ones where you either like it or you don't. I think it is a grab bag if you're picking up a Roald Dahl book.
Yeah, I've seen Matilda. I've never read it, so that's going to be Matilda and James and the Giant Peach are next.
Terrible parents again.
Just terrible parenting.
All the parents in Matilda just horrific.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. Like, she really has no support for being an extraordinary child, at least in the movies. I don't know if the books match. I assume they do a little bit. But yeah, we're going towards that next. And it's really interesting to read something with your kid and just viscerally despise it, and then have your child sort of argue with you about why they like it. It's like, you know, do that with your friends, right? You watch movies and books together and you have these arguments. You don't totally, you know, in my mind, my kid's like still a baby. And now she's like arguing with me about like why the plot points are good in this movie. And it's really incredible.
So this is so important, because I was thinking about this with music, because Master Marlow, my eldest, he really is interested in music, and he forms an opinion, and he feels so rejected and shut down if he and I don't agree. And I'm really open-minded on music. I studied music. I was a music minor in school. I played the violin. I'm a student of classical music, and I still like electronic music. There's a bunch of pop I like. I mean, I'm pretty easy to get along with on the music front. And every once in a while, there'll be typically a real bubblegum pop song that I just can't get into, and he'll like it, and he'll ask me to play it, and then he'll just see in my face I don't love it. That's all it takes. He'll just see in my face, and I wish we weren't playing this one. And he will be so upset by it. And it's really interesting, because I gotta be conscious of this as a parent.
Yeah, no, you gotta raise contrarians. Like, you're running Breitbart. Like, you need your kids to feel that like me against the world thing. My kids do that a little bit too. So as you know, I'm a huge Eurovision fan, the Eurovision Song Contest, and they have gotten into it with me, which, you know, there's stuff in there that I wish my kids weren't like super invested in. There's always like some gay stuff at Eurovision or whatever, but which I'm fine with, but I have to sit down and now have an explanation about like, oh, why this is, you know, why is this guy calling himself they? And then, you know, that's an issue. But they like every song, and a lot of those songs are horrible. And so they troll me. Instead of doing the disappointment thing, they will just demand the songs that I hate more often, because they find it amusing that I don't like something. So now I have to listen to these songs more often than I would, because they'll just be like, please, and like use their puppy dog faces. And now it's like, oh, great. Now I have to listen to this Belarus entry from like 2013 30 times because they love how much I hate it.
I still play some Epic Sax Guy from like the original Eurovision.
Yes, we play that one often.
Yeah, because they got the remakes now. I mean, the remixes, and they're really good. The people this is one where you got to look it up. You got to look it up. Epic Sax Guy. Yes. You will not be disappointed.
That was a Moldovan entry.
Moldova. That's correct. That's
yes,
right.
That's the greatest really song that I know of to ever come out of Moldova.
Yeah, so good, so catchy. Okay, so this is ostensibly a daily news podcast. So I do want to talk about some of the news, Francess. So what I wanted to do is reset with some of my favorites here on the show. What we're thinking of the world, or what we're thinking of things 6 months or so into Trump's first administration, and how things have changed. And I just want to go country by country or region by region and get your sense of how things are going. The biggest one is China, and I guess Russia is also big too. But those are sort of the biggest countries everyone's always got their eye on. So give me your assessment overall on how China has dealt with the first 6 months of Trump's administration, and how you feel like we've dealt with China.
I think that China's done the best that it can with a really bad hand. I think Trump came in hot. The policies that he put down were directed, and something that Trump did that I thought was very brilliant was he didn't name China. Some of the worst things that he did for the Chinese Communist Party had nothing to do with China overtly. So a lot of these trade deals, for example, these negotiations where he got a huge deal on copper with Indonesia. You don't have to name China. You don't have to talk about China, but that clearly affects China's monopoly on critical minerals, and it's going to put tension on China's relationship with Chile, which is the biggest copper producer in the world. So there were a lot of policies like that. And what China has basically done, for the most part, is say a lot of nice things and wait. They haven't taken a lot of big actions. They've been focusing more on shoring up their alliances, especially in Latin America, especially with Mexico. So they're trying to bring their friends closer that are the closest ones to us. But other than that, I haven't seen a lot of anti-Trump rhetoric in, Chinese state media. They've certainly taken the only thing they were really adamant against Trump on was the Elon Musk feud, because obviously Elon is one of them. So they're going to go to bat for their guy. But outside of that, they've been very mild. They have not given me as much content as I hoped. And I think that's probably smart. It's the best they can do.
But expand on this, Francess, about how Elon's one of them, because this has been look, I think Elon was very helpful politically for a while, and I like the idea of Doge, but overall, this is a Breitbart called shot that he did not pan out to be the sage political guru that so many people on X, the Everything app, hoped he would. And a lot of it was the China stuff was just too over the top to ignore. So break this down.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, Doge is an Argentine idea. That's Javier Milei's idea that Elon just stole. That's not Elon's idea. And Milei has done that. The Argentine government is way bigger than ours, and he's shut down, like a dozen or so federal agencies. So that's an idea that he borrowed. But his relationship to China is very, very deep because he has an EV company, and electric vehicles need a lot of products that only China can provide right now, especially with the critical minerals, the batteries, and he's also selling those cars over there, and he's selling to stiff competition. BYD, which is a Chinese EV manufacturer, the biggest manufacturer in the world of EVs, makes cars that are a lot cheaper than Tesla. They seem to be reliable for now. The technology is very new. We don't know what these cars are going to look like in 10 years, but seems more reliable than Tesla that has, every other day there's a story about how a Tesla randomly exploded. So there's a stiff competition with BYD. Elon has essentially decided to try to make friends with the Chinese government to temper that competition. I don't know how well it's gone, but every time he goes to China, he's feted with these elaborate, lavish banquets. Every senior official of the Chinese government meets with him. He has a showroom for Tesla right now in Urumqi, which is the capital of the Uyghur region where China's committing a genocide. So he's making money with the support and on the back of that genocide. So he's very deeply tied to the Chinese government. And he was the first and loudest to oppose any tariffs. He was the first and loudest to talk about how we need to invest more in EV because, it's going to be his company that gets it. But it's also a China thing. If you make China the North Star of all of your policies, then of course you want the US government to invest on like green energy and like everything that China's doing to make money, and in the industries where China has the most leverage because of the technology they control.
Okay, so talk to me about what you feel like we're doing to curb China, just in all the ways you feel like are really important, and how China's reacting to it. And do you feel like overall you're giving us a positive marks in the first 6 months?
Well, the short answer to that is yes. I think this is the most that the U.S. government has done to contain the economic threat of China, the takeover of enterprises that were once America dominated, that has hurt so much of our heartland and our manufacturing. It's the most we've done. Can we do more? Absolutely, but it's the most we've done. Again, the tariffs, the Liberation Day tariffs, where we targeted country by country, by name, that doesn't seem like it's directly about China, other than the China tariff, of course. But it is, because we're going to these countries, again, Indonesia, for example, and we're saying can we have more access to your copper? The fact that the first country to secure a deal with Trump was Vietnam, which Vietnam has a very difficult relationship with China. Ideologically, they're obviously both communist countries, but there's a 2,000 to 3,000 year history there of China trying to conquer Vietnam and failing, that Vietnam is not forgotten. They do not trust the Chinese government whatsoever. And so going in there, cutting a deal with Vietnam, which is also competitive in manufacturing. So essentially making it so that it looks more secure for companies to manufacture in Vietnam than China, that absolutely weakens China's appeal domestically. And we've seen this massive collapse in foreign direct investment in China. And it started with the pandemic, it started with the lockdowns, but it was informed by Jack Ma being disappeared, the richest man in China just being purged out of existence. And it continued with policies where, Trump is taking advantage of the insecurity and the tension, and he's trying to get more companies into the United States. And he's also bolstering countries like Vietnam, like India, that has a growing manufacturing base, to siphon away business from China.
Okay, so I think that China, you've got assessed pretty well. Let's turn our focus to Russia. So Russia is one of these ones that is, and always an elephant in the room on the left, but we on the right, I think, I feel like maybe we talk about Russia too much. Trump's Russia policy has been in line with his first administration, where he was tough on Russia. No one ever says this, but he's tough on Russia. Yeah, I mentioned this on the show. It's one of my most common refrains. He killed those Wagner troops in Syria. He tried to shut down Nord Stream 2, sanction Russia, proactively, preemptively sent weapons to Ukraine. He's actually been tough on Russia. And people never said that because he says nice stuff about Putin. He says nice stuff about anyone who will negotiate with him. He always says nice stuff, including Kim Jong-un. That's one of his moves, but no one ever talks about this. So how has he done this time, Francess? Assess Trump's foreign policy against Russia this administration.
I think he's done a lot better with China than with Russia. I mean, I would give him a B on Russia. And the reason for that is I think that he started to see Putin as a rational actor who is looking for peace. He thinks that Russia's, I think he started the term thinking that the end goal of the Russian invasion of Ukraine was stability and to eliminate a perceived threat from Ukraine, and not the colonization of Ukraine and then the greater colonization of Eastern Europe, which I think is, my personal opinion from everything I've seen from Putin. The goal here is colonization. It's not the excuses of, but NATO is on their border, all of this. But Trump did buy into that. And he thought if we could eliminate these alleged threats, then Putin's going to come to the negotiating table. And he gave Putin a tremendous gift by essentially spanking Zelensky in the White House, kicking him out of the office, humiliating this guy, the guy who saved him from impeachment in the first term. People forget Zelensky was the one that came in and said this alleged evil phone call was totally fine and there's no basis for impeachment. So he came in and he made a very big show of humiliating this person as a gesture of goodwill to the Russians. And he thought that that was going to bring them to the negotiating table, and it absolutely did not. Every time, the way Trump phrases it is every time he got off the phone with Putin, more bombs would fall. And so he started to see that as a sign of disrespect. And I think there's a major course correction happening now where we're seeing more sanctions. The secondary sanctions, which again, everything in the Trump administration is about China at the end of the day. Any secondary sanctions on Russian oil would go directly onto China. So all of that, I think, is to correct from his initial calculation that Putin was open to peace and not that Putin benefits from war, which I think is closer to the reality.
All right. We know that good coffee is kind of easy to find. There's a lot of good coffee out there, but great coffee, that's a different story. And when I was introduced to Crockett Coffee, I knew this was something special. This is roasted to perfection in small batches on purpose by experts who love the taste of great coffee and are conscientious about how it's made and who's making it. It's roasted in our nation's heartland and it's delivered fresh to your home. When you enjoy Crockett Coffee, you're also supporting an anti-communist, pro-American brand of coffee founded by our friends Clay Travis and Buck Sexton, who are good broadcasters and are apparently dang good at making a cup of coffee as well. The perfect type of thing to sip at a mountain campfire like a Western settler or in your office while you're doing a podcast. It is just really high quality stuff. You guys know I'm a coffee snob, married to an Italian. I like to hit that dark roast. They also sent me some mild roast, which was delicious. They got a light roast. They got a decaf. They got a mushroom organic blend. That's the new hotness. They got K-Cups. Lots of different options for you. And part of your support goes to Tunnel to Towers Foundation, which is a great way to give back and remind people that Crockett Coffee, people there, they pledge to never forget. Easy. Go online, crockettcoffee.com. Crockett like it as in Davy Crockett. crockettcoffee.com. Use my first name, Alex. You get 20% off your first order. That's crockettcoffee.com. Use my name, Alex, as the promo code for 20% off. Good people and a dang good cup of coffee. You guys know I would not endorse it if it wasn't quite delightful. Okay, so what do you recommend in terms of improvement, knowing that I think him understanding that Putin isn't totally rational is kind of scary, but also important because I find that I try to block off world leaders into rational or irrational camps. And most of the time, people like you and I, people who follow this stuff all the time, we can generally have a sense of where things are going to go based off of rationality. And overall, I've thought Putin mostly behaves rationally, but sometimes I feel like maybe he's sick, maybe he's just been at it too long, maybe there's internal struggles that we don't totally see, but I feel like I'm having a harder time predicting his patterns this time around than I was last time, because overall, I'm sort of surprised that he didn't want to bring this war to a close, and I think he probably could have done it in the first 6 months of Trump's administration, where he would look like the winner at least a little bit. I mean, not the way he wanted, but at least somewhat feel like, and then he could reset. And I mean, how many Russians have died in the war, do we think, at this point? And it's a ton, right?
Tens of thousands, at least. It's been
minimum,
a really,
right?
It's going to have severe implications for their birth rate for easily a generation.
That's my point. Is like, does he want to bring this thing home? Especially when you hear him talk about, he does Tucker Carlson interview, and he's waxing historical. If he thinks of himself that way, then how can he have this war where you're losing tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of people against Ukraine and you're not really getting much out of it? I mean, it just seems like a bad formula to keep this thing going. So do you use your crystal ball, look into the future? What do we think could happen with Russia?
Well, first, I would say I think Putin is still a rational actor. I just think we miscalculated what his goal is here. I think he benefits from the war because all of those men that are dying on the battlefield would be at home protesting what a horrible place it is to live in Russia, would be protesting against him. One of those soldiers that died could have been an opposition leader, So I think he benefits from having all of the domestic tension and potential violence against him redirected at Ukraine. And that, I don't think Trump took that into consideration. So I think he thought that he doesn't want to see the birth rate collapse. He doesn't want to see his people die. And in actuality, I think it's actually pretty convenient to lose a bunch of military-aged men who would be very disgruntled at home with like the high unemployment rates, with the rates of alcoholism, with just the horror that is living in Russia. So now that I think Trump has realized that's not his goal, and I do wonder, I don't know if Trump thinks that Putin is irrational or he has seen that the end goal of the invasion is not what he thought it was. But I do think he feels that Putin was trying to humble him. Even, what you said about the Tucker Carlson interview where Putin just went on about history for hours. The head of NATO said that during the first negotiation between Ukraine and Russia, which happened in Istanbul in June, I think, May or June, they sent instead of Putin sending a negotiator, he sent a historian. The historian started reciting the history of Russia in 1250 and to today instead of negotiating anything. So that's clearly a sign of disrespect. You don't do that when you're negotiating in good faith. And so I think what we're going to see is that the noose is going to tighten. We're going to see Trump start to treat Russia a little bit more like he treats Iran and a little bit less like, he treats a partner that, someone he respects that happens to be on the other side of the battlefield. In this case, I think he's been insulted.
Okay, next item on my mind, I want to talk about Middle East, particularly, I guess, maybe Syria is most interesting because you share a lot of coverage of the Israel. Joel Pollack and Aaron Klein do a lot of the heavy lifting on that, and there's sometimes overlap in the Middle East with our Europe Bureau. But Syria, let's talk about Syria. That's been one of the more chaotic regions, and just break people down who might not be on top of it. What are the key details in the last 6 months out of Syria?
So Syria has this new president who is a jihadi with ties to al-Qaeda who overthrew Assad. And President Trump has very much sort of put his chips down on this guy, Ahmed al-Sharaa. He met with Sharaa. He said Sharaa was handsome or attractive or something, and
yes,
that he has a bright future and that he's going to give the guy a shot. So Trump has given him basically a seal of approval. And it's a monumental task that this guy has in front of him because Syria is so divided. It's divided religiously. It's divided ethnically. You have the HTS jihadis who used to be under Sharaa's command. They're part of the problem. You have ISIS. You have the Druze. You have the Kurds. You have the Alawites. You have the Christians who are always in the middle of, getting in the crossfire of all these conflicts. So we've had multiple rounds of essentially attempted genocides where the first round was against the Alawites. We saw, door-to-door executions of Alawites by the Sunni Muslims. And Sharaa basically came out and said, knock it off. And it did stop. But then we have the conflict between the Bedouins and the Druze that just emerged a couple of weeks ago, and that is still ongoing. And Sharaa's doing the same thing. He gave a big speech and he said, "Hey guys, knock it off." And so the world is waiting to see whether he has the authority. The world is waiting to see whether he can control his side of these conflicts. And in the Druze conflict, the Druze are very closely aligned to Israel. Israel intervened. Israel bombed Damascus on their behalf. And Sharaa came out and he said, we support the rights of Bedouins, and he's currently trying to withdraw as many civilians from the battleground, the Bedouin civilians. But then once you take those civilians out, what happens to the militias? Are they going to respect Sharaa, or are they going to continue to try to commit genocide against the Druze? And no one knows for sure. We're in completely uncharted territory. So that's kind of where Syria is now.
Okay, so what do you think? Do you think stability can come to the region? It seems like Trump feels like he can work with Sharaa more, but he's got his handful with a lot of things, and not to mention he's, recovering jihadi, current jihadi. What do you even say? But hey, he is handsome. We heard that from Trump. So and he's got that going for him, which is nice. So
we're used to Ayatollah Khomeini, so.
Yeah. Not someone who's not classically handsome. I mean, I'm sure you could see it if you wanted to. But anyway, what's your prediction for the region?
I think, it all hinges upon whether Sharaa can command respect from his own jihadis. That's what it's all about. And in order to command respect from those people, I think he's going to have his troops commit some significant acts of violence against the jihadists who are trying to eliminate the other ethnic minorities. And the question is he going to be able to do that? If he does, if he can put down his iron fist, I think we are looking towards a situation where the rest of the world's going to want to make a tremendous amount of money rebuilding Syria. And you're going to have a bunch of international contractors come in and they're going to make a ton of money. And the second that you bring in, the second there's an American corporation working in Syria, that's going to bring a security security that was not there before. It's the same mentality as the Ukraine minerals deal, right? If we had put an American company in there, then that would deter a lot of violence. But that all hinges on, can Chirac control his own people? And he's going to have to be very tough to control. These are hardened jihadis that just finished a decade plus of civil war, and whether he can get them to listen or not, that's all that matters here.
Okay, so now I want to turn to Latin America. Let's start with the BRICS countries, and then I want to focus on Brazil in particular, because Brazil's seeing a lot of really interesting news cycles here. But Trump seems to understand, Francess, and you're the only other person in the country who understands this, that we can take BRICS seriously, and explain BRICS to people who don't understand it. And I think that this is really important because this is a way that could potentially undermine American economic dominance around the world if it succeeds, which it might not. But that is the goal openly, and yet we don't talk about it.
Yeah, BRICS is essentially a coalition of countries that hate America and want to replace America as the next superpower. That's the whole point. BRICS is an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It has since included some other countries: Egypt, Ethiopia, UAE, Iran, incredibly, and Indonesia. So that's the whole team. And then there are some BRICS partner countries that are completely useless, like Cuba, Belarus. I think Uzbekistan is in there. They are not a factor. The core BRICS countries are the factor. And the problem with BRICS is that the point of BRICS was to collectively challenge the United States, but all of its individual members are also in competition with each other. So China and India, for example, don't get along on anything. India is actively trying to destroy the Chinese economy. And then you have countries like Iran and UAE that are on either side of the Israel conflict. UAE is an Abraham Accords country. And so BRICS has really struggled to get anything done because they're too busy sniping at each other and losing sight of the goal, which is toppling American supremacy around the world.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about Brazil in particular. And they've got lawfare on the order of America. And this is something that I've been thinking about a lot because I got my lawfare book, Breaking the Law, coming out in a couple of weeks. And just thinking about, are there any other countries that do this stuff that aren't, entirely totalitarian dictatorships? And it really does feel like Brazil is the closest comp. It seems like they have a court system that's trying everything they can to rig elections. But explain this to us and explain how I think it's forged even closer ties with Bolsonaro and Trump.
Yes, I think Brazil is at the forefront and has been for a good decade of left-wing lawfare experiments. They are way ahead of us in the cycle that leads to total court dictatorship.
Hold on, that's such an important way of putting it. They're ahead of us. They're ahead of us. It's wild. And I think I agree. They
are far deeper in it because their Supreme Court is a lot more powerful, and their Supreme Court has been co-opted by leftists because they had so many leftist leaders. They had Lula for 2 presidential terms. Then they had Dilma Rousseff. Dilma Rousseff was kicked out, but the person who substituted, Temer, was just sort of a corrupt, no ideology guy. And eventually after him, we finally had Bolsonaro, which gave us a moment to breathe, but now we have Lula again. So all of this leftist leadership means that they stacked the bench with leftists. There's 11 people on the court. I think Bolsonaro put 2 people on the court. And so now you have this very far left activist Supreme Court. And the other thing you have is that their constitution grants the court way more powers than ours. A Supreme Court justice can order a police raid on your house.
Yes.
That is something that is just impossible to imagine in the United States. That's what I mean by they're ahead of us in terms of the judicial dictatorship taking form. Their court is way more powerful and way more violent. They can send police raids to your house. They did it to Bolsonaro. They're in charge of extraditing people too, whether to approve an extradition. And they can overturn court cases that have nothing to do with constitutional law or anything. So, for example, Lula himself was arrested and convicted multiple times of corruption. He took government money, and he bought himself a beach house. He was caught, and he was sentenced to something like 25 years in prison. And right before the 2022 election, the Supreme Court freed him. They just said, oh, the original district court didn't have jurisdiction, so we throw it all in the trash. They produced no evidence that Lula was innocent. They did not challenge the claims in those multiple convictions. They just came up with this jurisdictional case and they threw it out. And then simultaneously, they charge Bolsonaro with a variety of crimes. They say he stole some jewelry from Saudi Arabia. They said that he tried to stage a coup, that he tried to poison Lula personally. And the court is somehow also in charge of this. And so they raided Bolsonaro's house on Friday for posting a video thanking Trump for sending him a letter of support. So you can't even express opposition to the court. There was a congressman, Daniel Silveira, who was arrested for posting a video on YouTube saying that the Supreme Court was too powerful and that they had to do something about it. That guy went to jail. So it's really dangerous. And there's one Supreme Court justice in particular, Alexander de Moraes, who's the guy that we just sanctioned. He's the anti-fake news guy. Like his whole purview on the court is to fight fake news, quote unquote, which means that he's the guy who sends the police to raid your house. And by your, I very much mean like you, Alex, and me, if we were in Brazil, would be subject to things like this, where the federal police just raid your house, take all your stuff, and suddenly you're being charged for fake news, which is not a crime in Brazil.
So why is Trump involved? What is Trump, even though, I mean, I just think he likes Bolsonaro as a bro, but other than that, is there anything else?
I mean, that's a big part of it. But it's not just that they're bros, it's that they've experienced so many similar things. They both survived assassination attempts. I think Trump got out of his way better. He got a bullet to the ear. Bolsonaro got stabbed in the belly. He just had a 12-hour surgery a few months ago. He's still going through it from 2018. But they survived assassination attempts. The lawfare that Bolsonaro is experiencing now, the attempts to keep him off the ballot, I think that resonates with Trump. I think his experiences during 2023, 2024 election make him feel that very viscerally, that he went through the same thing. And he was lucky that he was an American and that he wasn't in a country where the courts are so overpowered. And I think that's what's that. And the last thing I'll say is, I think what's driving him is that he knows that if the left could do this here, they would, and they want to do this here.
That's right.
And Brazil is just a test case. Brazil is the lab. Once they can successfully replicate it in the lab, they're going to expand it outside of that country to places where I think it's going to have a much greater global impact. And that's what Trump's trying to stop.
Exactly. And that's why I'm trying to warn people that the lawfare apparatus is just getting going. They're not slowing down. They've had some setbacks because we won and the Supreme Court is mostly in our favor. But they see this as a real chance to slow down our agenda and to shut down our biggest people, to harass us to death, bankrupt us. It is going to continue. So interesting. Look at Brazil as a cautionary tale. Francess, thank you for keeping an eye on all of these fascinating and complex regions of the world for us at Breitbart and filling me in on your adventures in parenting as well today.
Thank you so much. I will watch Kpop Demon Hunters. I promise you. That's my homework assignment for the day.
Yeah, come back and do a review, and then I'll actually try to pay attention one of the times I see it on in my house, and we'll do a part 2 to this. All right, that's today's show. Thanks to producer Patricia and all of you in the audience for telling 10,000 friends and family members, liking, subscribing, commenting. All that helps in the algorithms, and that's our reality. We've got to deal with those things. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you next time.